made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold, thy gods, or thy mighty ones, O Israel, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. Now that's pagan, as pagan as all outdoors. Same thing that was done when the children of Israel left Egypt. And he says, and he set the one in Bethel and put the other in Dan. And the other put he in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month. What? You see this? He's just doing his own thing. They went off. So it says, and Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, and on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. And he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priest of the high places which he had made. So he offered upon the altar which he had made in Bethel the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised in his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel, and he offered upon the altar and burnt incense. So this is what Jeroboam was doing. And you can also see what Jeroboam and the others were doing in Amos chapter 8 verse 5. They added to the Most High's word, and they ordained the Sabbath, or the new moon, as a day of rest. And the Most High did not write that. And let's go on back to Amos chapter 8. Okay, we've already read verse 5. Now notice what the Most High says. Amos chapter 8 verse 10. He says, And I will turn your feasts into mourning, and all your songs into lamentation. And I will bring up sackcloth upon all loins, and baldness upon every head. And I will make it as the mourning of an only son, and the end thereof as a bitter day. Now if you all know anything, you know that sackcloth and baldness upon every head, that was when someone would mourn at another person's death. Okay, they would put on sackcloth, and they would shave their heads as a sign of mourning. Now let's prove that this, even though you should already know this is speaking of the northern kingdom, let's see how this prophecy was fulfilled and these things had came to pass. Okay, let's go to the book of Tobit in the Apocrypha. Let's start at chapter 1. Tobit 1 verse 1. It says, The book of the words of Tobit, son of Tobiel, the son of Aniel, the son of Aduel, the son of Gabiel, of the seed of Asel, of the tribe of Naphtali, who in the time of Emanessar, that's Shalmaneser, king of the Assyrians, was led captive out of Thisbe, which is at the right hand of that city, which is called properly Naphtali in Galilee above Asher. I, Tobit, have walked all the days of my life in the ways of truth and justice, and I did many alms deed to my brethren and my nation who came with me to Nineveh into the land of the Assyrians. And when I was in my own country, in the land of Israel, being but young, all the tribe of Naphtali, my father, fell from the house of Jerusalem, which was chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, that all the tribes should sacrifice there, where the temple of the habitation of the Most High was consecrated and built for all ages. Now all the tribes which together revolted, and the house of my father Naphtali sacrificed unto the heifer Baal, or Baal. Now we just read back in Kings how they built those golden calves. That's the heifer Baal, or El, the god El. Alright, so we can clearly see that Tobit was in the Assyrian captivity. Now let's go to chapter 2. Tobit 2 verse 1 says, Now when I was come home again, and my wife Anna was restored to me with my son Tobias, of the feast of Pentecost, which is the holy feast of 7 weeks, there was a good dinner prepared to me, in which I sat down to eat. Now this was during the captivity. Notice he's observing Pentecost in the captivity, but they weren't able to keep all the ordinances according to the law because they're in captivity, but he did observe the feast. But that's another lesson. Tobit 2 verse 2. And when I saw abundance of meat, I said to my son, go and bring what poor man soever thou shalt find out of our brethren, who is mindful of Yahweh, and lo, I tarry for thee. But he came again and said, Father, one of our nation is strangled and is cast out in the marketplace. Then before I have tasted of any meat, I started up and took him up into a room until the going down of the sun. Then I returned and washed myself and ate my meat in heaviness. Verse 6, remembering that prophecy of Amos, as he said, your feast shall be turned into mourning, and all your mirth into lamentation. You see that? And he says, therefore I wept, and after the going down of the sun, I went and made a grave and buried him. Now, why did he wait until the going down of the sun? Because it was a Sabbath. Yes, they kept the Sabbath. They kept the high days in the captivity. Okay, so you can see clearly that that was a prophecy against the northern kingdom. So any person who's trying to use Amos 8 and 5 to back up their reason behind a lunar Sabbath is simply doing the same thing that the northern kingdom did. You know, so maybe you are from the northern kingdom. Maybe you've fallen after the ways that we were told not to go in. We're supposed to adhere to the words of the Most High, not to add to or take away from his words. All right, now let's get some more information, more proof from some authoritative sources and scholars on how the Sabbath or how the new moon was kept. We also have to get some information on how the new moon was supposed to be sighted, because many of you are simply looking on a calendar, or you're making these calendars giving people the dates of the feast. You don't know the dates of the feast because it goes by the spotting of the moon, not by mathematical calculations. The new moon it can come on the 29th day of the month, or it can a moon can last for 29 days or 30 days. According to mathematical calculation, the moon is 29.5 or 0.6 days long. Now, depending where you are, or decides what day that you're going to see that new moon. Sometimes you can sight it on the 29th, or sometimes you can sight it after the 29th day. Sometimes it's on the 30th day. But the new moon cannot be sighted according to mathematical calculations. Therefore, you cannot set the feast days according to mathematical calculations. So if anyone puts up a calendar saying these are all the feast days for this year, they do not know what they're talking about, and they're following after the ways of the Jewish calendar, which is not accurate. Sometimes it's on point. Sometimes it might be a day off. Those things are not accurate, and we're commanded to sight the moon. I'll even prove that. Notice in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, it says, and the Mighty One said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. So he says, let them be for signs and for seasons. Now, if we look this word up, where it says, and for seasons, this is the word moad. It means properly an appointment. That is a fixed time or season, specifically a festival. All right? And it's been translated as feast. So the lights that were in, it didn't say the bodies. Many people think these things were created this day. That's another lesson. But it said the lights. He ordained those lights to be for signs and for season and for days. All right. So when we can tell when a season comes by seeing the light from the new moon, when you can spot that crescent, not when there's a black moon, because according to mathematics, they call a new moon a black moon when you can't see anything in the sky. That's a mathematical new moon. But the Most High's new moon is a crescent.